Hello, good morning everybody. How's everybody doing? And I'm here to read your story. But before that, let me give you a quick recap of what the dragons are called here in Wings of Fire. So let me just turn in the page again. So here we are, and for the dragons I will be reading their description, their abilities, their queen, and their alliances. So here's a recap of all the dragons. First we start with Sandwings, and then we'll go up to Mud Wings, Sky Wings, Sea Wings, Ice Wings, Rain Wings, Night Wings. Okay? So Sand Wings. Pale gold or white scales, the color of desert sand. Poisonous barbed tail, forked black tongues. Can survive a long time without water, poison, enemies with the tips of their tails like scorpions. Bury themselves for camouflage in the desert sand. Breathe fire. Since the death of Queen Oasis, the tribe is split between three rivals for the throne: Sisters, Burn, Blister, and Blaze. Burn fights along Sky Wings and Mud Wings. Blister is allied with the Sea Wings, and Blaze has the support of most Sand Wings, as well as an alliance with the Ice Wings. Next is Mud Wings. Thick armored brown scales, sometimes with amber and gold underscales. Large flat heads with nostrils on top of the snout. Can breathe fire if warm enough. Hold their breath for up to an hour. Blend into large mud puddles, usually very strong. Queen Moorhen. Currently allied with Burn and the Sky Wings in the Great War. Next, we have the Sky Wings. The Sky Wings. Red, gold, or orange scales. Enormous wings. Powerful fighters and flyers. Can breathe fire. Queen Scarlet. Currently allied with Burn and the Mud Wings in the Great War. And next, we have the Sea Wings. Blue or green or aquamarine scales. Webs. Between the claws, gills on their necks. Glow in the dark. Stripes on their tails, snouts, underbellies. Can breathe underwater, see in the dark, create huge waves with one splash of their powerful tails. Excellent swimmers. Queen Coral. Currently allied with Blister in the Great War. Next, we have the Ice Wings. Hello, Bara. Good morning. How are you? Wala pa nga, hindi pa nga nagsimula eh. But yes, thank you, Bara, for the hydrate redeem. Not asleep yet. Sige. Ito ang magpapa-untalk sa'yo. Saktong-sakto, I'm gonna read a book for all of you. So the Ice Wings, their description: silvery scales like the moon or pale blue like ice. Ridged claws to grip the ice, for blue tongues, tails narrow to a whip thin end. Can withstand sub-zero temperatures and bright light, exhale a deadly freezing breath. Queen Glacier. Currently allied with Blaze and most of the Sandwings in the Great War. Oh no, your battery's gonna die soon. Why don't you charge your phone though, Bara? Charge it while you can. Next. My god, Miss Kira, what is this Dijan stream? Hello, Dolan! Hello, welcome to the stream. Magandang umaga po, Ginoong Dolan. And yes, I'm not doing anything saucy in this Dijan hour. I'm gonna make you all of you sleepy. I'm gonna read you all a story. I am just doing a recap of what these dragons look like, what their description, what their abilities, who's their queen, and who are they alliance with. So yeah. I was about to sleep, but then I saw your stream go live. Yo, you know. Chargers downstairs because my room doesn't have any wall plugs. Oh no, ayun lang. Bara, can somebody invest Bara a power bank, please? Yes, now you're compelled to stay. Yes, sir. So, we are done with the ice wings. Ay, wait lang. O nga, tama. Binasa ko na yung ice wings. Next is the rain wings. Yes! Hello, Rowan Nakes. Hello. Good morning. Everyone raise your hands and then we are... God. So we have the rain wings. Scales constantly shift color, usually bright like birds of paradise. Prehensile tails can camouflage their scales to blend into their surroundings. Use their prehensile tails for climbing. No known natural weapons. Queen dazzling. Not involved in the Great War. And then, hello Kuya Rolf! Hello! Si Kuya Rolf magpapaantok na. Hello po. Si Kuya Rolf. And then we have, the last one is the night wings. Purplish black scales and scattered silver scales on the underside of their wings, like a night sky full of stars, forked black tongues. Can breathe fire, disappear into dark shadows, read minds, foretell the future. A closely guarded secret. Hindi kasi sinabi kung sino yung queen nila eh. So, too mysterious and powerful to be part of the war. Yes, lurk lang ako. Nunood din ako ng Valo Championship. Ayo? O nga pala, may championship ngayon. Ano ang Valo? Okay, lurk well, Kuya Rolf. Okay, so we are done with the chapter 1 to 5. Let's proceed with the chapter 6. Chapter 6. Ayan. Okay. Let's turn the Nightwing off. And then we'll go back to the front cover. Okay. Chapter 6. Starlight was lucky. His stomach was empty. It heaved perilously and he had to cover his eyes and take a deep breath before he could speak again. The Rainwing was the sad grey color of the chains that had bound Starlight in the Sky Kingdom. The first time he'd been separated from Sunny. She dropped against the wall, her wings outstretched and secured in place. When he was able to look again, he saw that what he'd thought were pins were actually clamps, holding her where she was, but not going straight through her wings as he'd first thought. Not that anything about this is all right. What are you doing to her? Fate's speaker cried. She bolted into the room and lifted the Rainwing snout gently into her talons. The trapped dragon barely responded. This one is done for the day, Mastermind said. We were testing to see whether they ran out of venom at some point if they shoot it for long enough, but she fainted before we could get any really useful data. She needs water, Fate's speaker said, glancing around the room, then looking straight at Starflight. He hesitated, remembering Droid and Crocodile again. If this dragon did suddenly spray venom at them, he wouldn't blame her. but he didn't want to be in the way when it happened. "Starflight," Fate's speaker said, and the tone of her voice reminded him again so much of Sunny that he couldn't say no to her. "I'll get some." He flew to one of the pipes on the desalinization machine, where he'd seen a faucet earlier, found an empty cauldron that smelled clean, and filled it up. Fate's speaker had one of the prisoner's wings and unclamped by the time Starflight got back. Mastermind stood in the doorway, watching through the holes in his helmet, but neither interfering nor helping. It was hard to know what he was thinking with his face completely hidden. Starflight brushed past him and set the cauldron down, then unclamped the dragon's other wing. She slumped forward so suddenly that both Fate's speaker and Starflight were nearly knocked over, but they managed to catch her and lean her wings over their shoulders. Fate's speaker held the cauldron up, and the rain wing revived enough to drink a little. "What's your name?" Starflight asked her. She coughed and looked sideways at him. "No Nightwing has ever asked my name before," she whispered hoarsely. "It's Orchid." "Oh!" Starflight gasped, then closed his mouth quickly and glanced at the door. Mastermind was leaning into the hallway, yelling, "Strong wings! Strong wings, you blockhead, get up here! Mangrove is looking for you!" Starflight whispered hurriedly. "He hasn't given up. He'll be here to rescue you soon." Fate's speaker stared at him as if he just peeled off his scales and revealed a hippo underneath. But Orchid lifted her head, her eyes flooding with hope. A shimmering rose pink spread over her, starting on her chest and drifting out to her wingtips. "Soon," she said softly. "Then I can hang on until he comes." I hope it'll be soon," Starflight thought. "I hope he doesn't die on his way here. I hope Glory survives too. I hope my friends are planning to rescue me as well." Fate's speaker's expression was 10 kinds of confused. She tilted her head as if she was listening, and Starflight realized with a jolt of panic that he'd been having several unguarded thoughts since they'd started this part of the tour. He'd forgotten. How could I forget? Too worried about having his mind read. But his father hadn't reacted to any of his thoughts. Mastermind looked as pleased as ever. Not a mind reader then, perhaps. Maybe those kinds of powers aren't genetically dominant in us. Maybe it is enough just to be smart like him. He'd always thought all Nightwings could read minds and all Nightwings could see the future. That's what it sounded like in the scrolls he'd read. But Gloria thought maybe it was only some of them, and perhaps she was right. Maybe I'm not completely defective. 3 moons! Mastermind buzzed from the doorway. How did you turn her that pink color? I've never seen any of them look like that before. That's because it's the color of happiness, and there's no happiness on this twisted island. Starflight met Fate's speaker's eyes. I think she's just grateful for the water, Fate's speaker said, blinking at him. He didn't have to read minds to guess she was thinking. We'll be talking about this later. Fascinating. Mastermind came over and prodded the scales on Orchid's neck with one claw. She closed her eyes. Her color didn't change. Utterly fascinating. A burly Nightwing slouched grumpily in front the balcony. Half a lizard hung from one corner of his mouth, and his shoulders were almost too wide for his wings to fit through the door. What? He mumbled, chewing. This one can go back, said Mastermind. Oh, and Strongwings, guess what? This is my son. He waved gleefully at Starflight. Starflight wished he could go back half an hour in time, to when he'd been just as happy about those words as Mastermind was. Strongwings gave Starflight a dubious look. Heh, he said. All right. So when do I get a helmet like that? He nodded at the thing on Mastermind's head. This is just a prototype, Mastermind said. He turned to Starflight. As you can imagine, the hardest part of creating venom-resistant armor is coming up with a solution that protects the eyes but still allows one to see. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I must admit, I'm stymied. This is a thoroughly imperfect solution. He tapped on the helmet with his talons. Peripheral vision is negligible at best, and of course, venom could still splash through the holes if one were unlucky. He shook his head. There must be a more ingenious approach. Whatever, Strongwings grumped. Where's her band? Mastermind waved at a corner, and the muscular Nightwing picked up a heap of metal and one of the spears. He brought it over and fitted a kind of muzzle around Orchid's mouth, twisted the lock into place with a practiced flick of the spear's tips. Then he shooed Starflight and, Fate Speakers aside, snapped a chain around the Rainwing's neck and gave it a yank. Without protesting, Orchid followed him out of the room. But why are you doing this? Starflight blurted. Why study their venom at all? Mastermind pulled off the helmet and gave him a confused look. It's science! We're expanding dragon knowledge! There's got to be more to it than that, Starflight said. Why is it so important? Why do you need venom-resistant armor? The Rainwings would never have bothered you if you left them alone. His father shrugged. The Queen has her reasons, I have mine. I don't get involved in her plans. For me, scientific discovery is reason enough. Starflight looked at the clamps on the wall, then down at the floor, too sickened to ask any more questions. Well, I wish I had time to show you more, Mastermind said, setting his helmet up on a shelf. But my daily scheduled meeting with the Queen is upon me. Do you get to see her? Starflight asked. No, said Mastermind. 3 moons. No one sees the Queen. Not for the last 9 years or so. She's very private. Really? Starflight thought. I wish I had some more progress to report, Mastermind mused. But telling her about you will certainly be a triumph. Come back tomorrow and we can get to know each other better, yes? He wrapped his wings around Starflight and hugged him, not waiting for an answer. It was fantastic to meet you, son. I am so very proud. He ushered them out of the door and locked it, then slid away toward a tunnel at the far end of the balcony. Starflight glanced along the row of doors, imagining tortured Rainwings behind each one. Wow, Fate Speaker said. So turns out we might be horrible. I did not foresee that all. Starflight sat down, his shoulders slumping. I believe everything I read about Nightwings being so noble and brilliant and perfect. I can't understand this. I'm just listening to the stream until I fall asleep. That's exactly the point, Dolan. That's exactly the point. I will read you, everyone, a story until you guys fall asleep. That's exactly the plan. So, where have you been? She asked curiously. You're not like them. And who's Mangrove? I was raised by the talons of peace too, he said, hoping he could avoid the Mangrove question by distracting her. Actually, I am the one in the prophecy. Or I was. I guess I'm expendable, since they're replacing me with you. What? She took a step back, fluttering her wings. Wait, I never saw you. I lived right in the talons of Peace Camp. We were kept hidden, Starflight explained. Under a mountain, no one was supposed to find us. There you are. Morrow's Seer landed beside them with a thump. If you're quite finished with your little chat, There are other pressing matters we could attend to. I'm not finished, Fate's speaker said, whirling toward him. It's all special and chosen too. How can we both be in the prophecy? Only one of you will be, said Morrow's here, but that's why you're both here, so that we can decide which one. So there's still a chance, Starflight thought. Don't you know? Didn't you deliver that prophecy? Fate's speaker asked, wrinkling her nose. Prophecies can be complicated, Morrow's here said coldly. Oh, Fate's speaker said. Good comeback. I should write that down and use it on Viper. The real problem, Morrow's here went on, is that neither of you are suitable candidates whatsoever, but we have no other dragonettes on the right age we could use, so it must be one of you, he growled. We apparently made a grave error allowing you to be raised outside the tribe where we thought you'd be safe from, well, just in case. It has always been our assumption that Nightwing superiority is something every Nightwing is hatched with. He looked down his nose at the two dragonettes. Evidently, we were wrong. But why aren't I suitable? Starflight asked. He hated the plaintive tone in his voice. But he couldn't seem to quash it. What have I done? You have no leadership qualities, Morrowseer said. You make Nightwings look like cowards and followers, and you antagonized our ally. Blister? Starflight said, uncomfortably remembering his interaction with her in the Kingdom of the Sea. He tried to find reasons to support her as the next Sandwing Queen. Really, he tried, but she was too manipulative and too untrustworthy, and he didn't like the way she looked at Sunny, as if the little dragonette would make an excellent snack. You have placed our whole plan in jeopardy, Morrowseer said. What plan? Starflight cried. How am I supposed to make anything happen when I don't even know what you really want? To his surprise, Morrowseer actually paused and thought about that. No, he rumbled finally. Dragonettes can't be trusted with secrets. Perhaps if you are the one chosen, we can reveal more. But all you should really need to know is how to follow orders, he scowled. Now come. Morrowseer swept away, lashing his tail. Starflight and Fate Speaker exchanged glances. Have your visions given you any hints? Starflight asked. About whatever their secret plan is, I mean. She scratched her neck, the anklet of silver scales glittering as she moved. Let me think. She closed her eyes for a moment and opened them again. Oh, absolutely, it involves us, but both of us. And we're going to be heroes, and the whole tribe will help us stop the war, and maybe they'll even make us king and queen. Startled, he blinked at her. King and queen? But he couldn't. She wasn't. Well, she wasn't Sunny, and he'd been in love with one dragon his whole life. Move now, or I will kill you both, prophecy or no prophecy, Morrowseer bellowed from the tunnel. The dragonets scrambled up and hurried after him, tripping over each other. Fate Speaker bounded into the lead, and Starflight was left trailing behind, his mind a whirl of confusion. He didn't want to think about a possible future as Fate Speaker's king, so he focused on his father's experiments instead. Why are they torturing the Rainwings? I can figure this out. Think, Starflight, think! His first guess was that the Nightwings wanted to use Rainwing venom themselves. As Vengeance had said, it was one of the most powerful weapons in Pyria. If they could somehow replicate the venom or adapt it for their own purposes, plus their telepathy and precognition would make the Nightwings unstoppable. Maybe their secret plan involved joining the war once they had this new kind of weapon for themselves. Starflight already knew they'd chosen a side. Blisters. Although why her? And why they were thinking of fighting the war. Now, 18 years into it, he couldn't figure out. Perhaps Blister had promised them something, the way Blaze was giving up territory to the Ice Wings in exchange for their help. Territory. Starflight stopped in the middle of the rocky tunnel as understanding flooded over him. That's what they need. More than anything, the Nightwings need a new home. The volcano was extremely dangerous. Maybe it had been dormant when the tribe moved here, but it certainly wasn't anymore. The Nightwings were living under its threat every day, and the island was a horrible place to live. They must be running out of prey, with hardly any fresh water to drink, no view of the sky through the thick cloud cover, and nowhere to go except through the tunnel to the rainforest. The rainforest, which was the opposite of here, the perfect place to live. That's the plan, Starflight clutched his head. Why hadn't he figured it out sooner? The Nightwings weren't trying to reproduce the venom. Mastermind's experiments were all about how to defend against it. Because the Nightwings were planning to invade the rainforest and steal it from the Rainwings. But they were afraid of the Rainwings fighting back. Even the famously peaceful tribe wouldn't surely have to defend their home. So the Nightwings were figuring out how to protect themselves from Rainwing venom in preparation for the day when they stormed into the rainforest and took it over for themselves. Is that what Blister has promised them? The tunnel for the rainforest to the Kingdom of Sand. That's for a Sandwing army, once she is queen, so they can come through and help the Nightwings fight the Rainwings, if need be. The Rainwings were in awful danger. This wasn't a matter of few dragons disappearing here or there. Glory was right, and Queen Magnificent was wrong. They have to fight back, or soon they'll all be dead. And I'm the only one who knows. But he was just Starflight, the weakest, most cowardly dragon ever chosen for a prophecy. How would he have saved the Rainwings? How would he stop his own tribe from destroying them? Fate's speaker came charging back down the tunnel. I keep thinking he can't get any more grumpy, and then he does, she said. Come on, hurry up. He says you have to meet the others in case you're the dragonet in the prophecy instead of me. She waved her talons in front of his face. Wake up, dreamy face. Starflight shook himself as hard as he could. Coming, he said, although he felt like he could barely string words together. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he knew he wasn't. All the pieces fit together too well. I figured out the Nightwing's secret plan, he thought. But now, what do I do about it? So we have the part 2, the Queen's Secret. On to chapter 7. But first let me self-hydrate. Just one chapter making me all thirsty. Okay. Let's continue. Others. What Faith Speaker had said didn't sink in until Starflight was actually standing in the cave, a short flight from the fortress, facing four unfamiliar and unfriendly faces, red, green, brown, and white gold. They have a Skywing, Starflight thought, and a Sandwing who looks like a real Sandwing. He hadn't met many Sandwings in his life, but this one's scowl and restless hostility made her look like the opposite of Sunny. The alternate dragonets of destiny, Morosir growled, scanning them with a displeased expression. Who's that? Said the emerald green sea wing, squinting at Starflight. Looks like her. Is he going to be annoying like her? He jerked his head at Faith Speaker. This is Starflight. Starflight, these are my friends, Faith Speaker said. blithely ignoring him. The Skywing snorted and the Sandwing rolled her eyes. Over there is Flame, the Skywing obviously. The fat Mudwing is Ochre, the Sandwing, with a sour expression is Viper, and the shrimpy Seawing is Squid. Did you get in trouble? Squid asked Morosier. I told you she'd get in trouble if she left the cave. I hope we thumped her. Where have you been? Viper demanded at the same time, jabbing her poisonous tail toward Morosier. We've been here for a whole day and a half, and no one has checked on us or fed us anything but what appears to be leftovers from a meal 3 months ago. Most of which he threw up, Flame said darkly, pointing at Ochre. It was awful, Ochre said. Probably food poisoning. You're unlucky I'm still alive. Oh, he's still lucky though. Quite lucky, agreed Flame, since I was extremely tempted to kill him. That's why it smells so bad in here, Fate Speaker offered. Can we move to a different cave? Or, into the fortress? If there's a whole other set of dragonettes with all the elements that are really in the prophecy, then nobody needs us at all. Starflight's head was spinning. But if the Talons of Peace had this all along, then why treat us the way they did? Why keep us around? And why would the Nightwings send an assassin after us? Pieces started to fall into place in his head. They wanted us dead so they could replace us with these 5. It wouldn't do to have 2 sets of dragonettes running around claiming destiny. Then he thought about the timing, and a shudder ran through his scales. We had a chance until we angered Blister. Until I angered her. It was after that when they decided to kill us, because I failed to convince the others to pick her as a queen. Morosier was watching his face intently, as if he might be listening to the thoughts running through Starflight's mind. So, Deathbringer was coming for all of us, Starflight said to him. His primary target was the Rainwing, said Morosier. Secondary, the Seawing, the rest of you are still negotiable. Starflight shook his head. You can't kill Glory and Tsunami. I won't do anything you say if that happens. His talons trembled as if the volcano were rumbling under his feet. He half expected Morosier to slash his throat right then. We'll see, said Morosier. He didn't look very worried. Your real problem is that my friends are never going to let you replace me, Fate Speaker said to Morosier. We were raised together. We're loyal to each other. They'll fight back if you try to take me out and put someone else in. Replace her? Viper said alertly. We can do that? Do it, said Flame. I vote yes. Me too, said Ochre. He looks quiet. Quiet would be great. Can I be the one to shove her off the cliff? Squid asked. Facemaker gave them all an injured look. Very funny, guys. Starflight got a distinct impression that they weren't joking. Poor Fate Speaker, he thought she really thinks they're her friends. Do you have an annoying visions all the time too? Squid asked Starflight. Starflight shuffled his talons awkwardly, but Morosier cut him off before he had to answer. You may all be replaced, he said as if the word tasted disagreeable in his mouth. Except for you, he nodded at Flame. The Skywing Dragonet puffed out his chest. Ha! And don't you all forget it! Viper hissed at him. Then why did you bring us here? She asked Morosier. And when can we go back? Squid asked. Morosier frowned at Squid. Starflight could sense that he found the Seawing unusually irritating. He wondered if that meant that Nightwings might change their minds about Tsunami. If they kept her alive, they wouldn't have to deal with these dragons as the alternative. Then again, Tsunami could be pretty unusually irritating too. Too bad it didn't work out more neatly for Morris here, Starflight thought with a twinge of satisfaction. Two unsuitable Nightwings, two annoying Sea Wings, but two perfectly fine Mudwings and Sandwings. He thought Sunny was more than perfectly fine, of course. Who needed a poisonous tail when she was funny, smart, and kinder than any other dragon in the world? If you want to be part of this, what I need to see from all of you, Morris here growled, is that you can take order, work together, and do as you're told. Take orders and do as you're told are the same thing, Fate Speaker said to him. He glared at her. That's how important it is. His dark eyes scanned the dragonets in front of him. So, your first test, he said to Starflight. All you have to do, if you can, is stay alive. What? Starflight said. The rest of you, said Morosier, kill him. He flicked his tail at Starflight. The dragonets all stared at him for a long, awful moment. Can't we kill her instead? Viper asked, pointing at Fate Speaker. Oh yes, I volunteer, said Flame. No, Morosier nearly shouted. What are you waiting for? That was an order. I said kill him! He's serious, Starflight realized, and then Viper lunged at him, her poisonous tail arching forward like scorpions. On his other side, Ochre's claw slashed at his wing, missing by a hair, and Flame made the fire is coming hissing sound Starflight remembered from his terrible training sessions with Kestrel. Morosier was probably hoping to see Starflight's fighting skills in action, but Starflight didn't care. He knew better than to rely on those. He also knew he couldn't do what he normally did, which was freeze and hope nobody noticed him. Starflight ducked under Ochre's wing, shoved Squid into Viper, touched around Fate Speaker, and leaped out of the cave. Wind whistled through his wings as he sailed down the cliff. The shouts of the dragonets echoed behind him. He knew they'd be right on his tail. He had to find somewhere to hide. I'm gonna go drink first. Okay, let's continue. Chapter 8. Starflight shot down the cliffside and banked toward the ocean. His eyes scanned the ground below him frantically. The good news was, if he'd understood them right, the dragonets hadn't been on the island very long and probably didn't know its geography at all. The bad news was, neither did he. Right now he was on the other side of the volcano from the forest. Here, there were no trees. Everything below him was dark rocks or rivers of glowing lava. Nothing to hide behind. Ahead of him, there was a strip of black sand beach that seemed to circle the island. He remembered Glory saying that the tunnel to the rainforest was in a cave above a black sand beach. He wondered for a moment if he could find it, but there wasn't time with the dragonets coming after him. He couldn't outfly them for long either. Flame, like most Skywings, had enormous wings, which made them faster than dragons from any other tribe. He risked a glance over his shoulder and saw the bright colors of 4 dragonets flash through the sky, much closer than he would have liked. Only 4. Fate Speaker was nowhere to be seen. Disobeying orders, or sneaking up on me some other way. He didn't have time to think about it. Starflight twisted into a dive and swooped as close to the ground as he dared. His black scales would make him harder to see against the rocks than if he were up in the sky. A blast of steam shot out of one of the vents in the ground, and he flapped hastily aside, barely avoiding the heat. From this close, the rocks below looked even more like black dragon scales. but all melted and fused together. Like mine will be if Flame and Viper get their claws on me. The problem was, the Dragonets were so close behind him that they'd see anything he did. They'd be able to follow him straight to any hiding place. It was too risky to try to lose them in the water or the clouds, not with a sea wing and a sky wing among them. He beat his wings faster, trying to think. Use your brain, Starflight, that's all you've got. There was only one place to hide, the fortress. Maybe he'd find a room he could lock himself into it, or maybe his father would help him. He swooped into an arc, heading toward it, hoping the Dragonets wouldn't cut him off before he reached it. Another blaze of heat brushed his tail, and he twisted to see where the steam had come from this time. To his horror, Flame was only a few wing beats behind him, with fire curling out of his nose. The sight of the skywing propelled Starflight toward the Dragonet, beating his wings as hard as he could. But his muscles already ached with exhaustion, and he knew he'd never make it to the fortress before Flame caught up. Then he spotted the caves that lined the lava river below. The Rainwing prisons! Glory had described hers in vivid detail. Suddenly, a blast of thick smoke shot out of a vent in the ground below him. This was a chance he couldn't miss. He dropped behind the smoke, hoping it looked as though he was still aiming for the fortress, and then spiraled tightly down and dove into the first cave he found. A Nightwing guard was lying across the entrance. Starflight shot over her head and tumbled onto the stone floor. The guard sat up in a hurry, blinking as if she'd been asleep. Farther into the cave, Starflight heard scales shifting as the imprisoned Rainwing peeked out at the commotion. "Hey!" said the guard. "What are you doing here?" She lashed her tail, looking very large all of a sudden, despite the ribs visible through her underscales. Starflight staggered up to his feet again, trying to look calm and ordinary and like he wasn't being chased. I came to see the Rainwing," Starflight stammered. "The prisoner?" The guard frowned suspiciously. "Why?" Starflight flipped through scrolls in his head as fast as he could. There were a few stories about Dragonets in his favorite scroll, Tales of the Nightwings. This couldn't possibly work out, but school project? He tried. To his astonishment, the guard completely relaxed. "Ah," she said. "Assignment from Mastermind, right? That weirdo is all about field studies and live observation. Drives my daughter crazy. Alright, go ahead. Just be careful." Starflight bowed gratefully and fled toward the back of the cave. The Rainwing prisoner was chained to the floor and the wall, and his knot was wrapped in an iron band like the one Strongwings had put on Orchid. He watched Starflight with a resigned, mournful expression. His scales were gray and dark blue. Starflight wondered if extra chains had been added to all the dragons after Glory and King Kaju escaped. As far as he remembered, Glory had been muzzled but not chained to the wall. He was tempted to tell the sad Rainwing that he would be rescued soon too, but it was dangerous enough that he told Orchid. He had no idea whether Rainwings could keep secrets, and if the Nightwings found out that he'd been going around saying reassuring things to the prisoners. Well, he couldn't imagine they'd like it very much. A commotion of wings sounded outside. Starflight turned to the back of the cave, which overlooked a huge, dark abyss. Glory had said that all the prison caves were connected by this chasm, which was how King Kaju got from one to the other. The last thing Starflight wanted to do was jump into the darkness. Well, no. The very last thing he wanted to do was face flame and Viper in talon-to-talon combat, so given those choices, leaping off a cliff into the pitch black was a clear winner. He spread his wings and hopped off the edge, flapping to lower himself down slowly. He kept thinking he was about to crash into something sharp and pointy, but only empty space yawned below him, as if it were trying to suck him down. Finally, several dragon lengths down from the top, he felt a shallow ledge below him and gently rested his talons on it, folding his wings in. Even if someone peered into the chasm, his black scales should keep him well hidden in the shadows. Voices started shouting up above. "Where is he?" That sounded like Flame. "Who are you?" roared the Nightwing Guard. "Intruders! A Skywing and a Mudwing! They've come back from the rest of our prisoners!" She started banging on some kind of metal alarm gong that reverberated painfully off the rocks around Starflight. He covered his ears, but even over all the noise he could still hear Flame bellowing. "No! We're supposed to be here!" And Ochre, where were the Moros here? "We're trying to kill a Nightwing Dragonette!" Flame shouted. "Did you see where he went?" Wow, that was the wrong thing to say, Starflight thought. "They're here to kill our Dragonettes!" shrieked the Nightwing Guard. An almighty crash followed, as if she'd smashed the gong over Flame's head. Starflight hoped she had. Every time he thought of the Skywing's smug face, he thought of how Flame was meant to take Glory's place in the prophecy. Moros here has been trying to have Glory killed since the first moment he saw her, he thought. Because she's a Rainwing, and he was afraid she'd figured out the plan and won her tribe. It's not that he thinks she's weak and useless, he's actually worried about what she might do. As he should be. Thank you, Raju, for the hydrate redeem. Thank you for the hydrate redeem. The crashing and shouting finally ended with the sounds of what appeared to be several guards arriving and cutting off Flame and Ochre. Starflight hoped Viper and Squid had met a similar fate, maybe searching for him in the fortress, just in case he decided to stay hidden for a while longer. I could try to escape, he thought. Now, while no one is watching me, I could try to get back to the rainforest to warn Glory and the others. I have an idea where the tunnel is, but surely it's guarded. And surely they'd stop me, and even more surely, Moros here would be furious, and most likely he'd kill me himself. He closed his eyes, picturing the island. Or I could fly away across the ocean. Just pick a direction and go. He already knew he'd never be brave enough to try that. There was no way to know where the nearest land was, or how to find the mainland from here. This island had not been on any of the maps of Pyria he'd ever seen. That was for sure. Starflight wrapped his wings around his talons, rested his head against a rock wall behind him, and sighed. "Starflight?" A voice whispered above him. He froze. The shadows would hide him if he kept still. "Starflight, it's me, Fate Speaker," she called softly. He realized her voice wasn't coming from the cave he'd come through. She must be in the cave next to it, also overlooking the abyss. "I'm pretty sure you're down there," she said, "because it's a crazy smart and crazy brave thing to do." Which sounds like you. Ha! Starflight thought. Crazy brave is the opposite of me. Crazy brave is Tsunami. Crazy brave would have been turning around to fight all 4 Dragonauts at once, which is what she would have done. Sitting in a dark hole? Waiting for someone else to deal with my problem? She's right about one thing. That does sound like me. Face Speaker sat quietly for a moment, but he could still hear her breathing. Of course, if you're not down there, I sound totally insane right now, she said. There's a rainwing sitting next to me who is giving me the weirdest looks. Hey there, what's happening? Nothing weird, just talking to a pit. Carry on looking miserable, don't remind me. Oof, his ears went a little yellow, she reported. Does that mean amused or terribly annoyed? What do you think? Amused, Starflight thought. If his very limited study of rainwing scale shifting was any guide, I wish I could let it go. Sad dragon. She said to the rainwing, I'd need one of those long, pointy sticks, though. Starflight, come on. Get up here so we can talk about how to help all these sad dragons. I checked a few of the other caves, and there are at least 10 of them. Can you imagine? 14, according to Kinkajou. Oh, I promise I'm not going to kill you, she added. Is that what you're worried about? My visions say we're going to do amazing things together. That's hardly going to happen if you're dead, right? I don't mind telling Moros here that my prophecies are just as good as his prophecies, and my prophecies say you get to live forever. So there. Starflight smiled into the dark. He would love to be present for that conversation. All right, he said. I'm coming. Together they flew back to the cave, where Viper and Squid were huddled suddenly against the wall, and Morosir was pacing back and forth. Oh, did you lose some dragonettes? Fate Speaker said to him with mock sympathy. Morosir glared at her. It's not funny, Squid hissed. There were about 1,000 Nightwing guards chasing me. Viper rolled her eyes. Try 4, she said. They nearly burned my tail. One of their spears could have taken an eye out. And when I told them I was Dragonet of Destiny, they got even more mad. I want to go home. Squid folded his wings and sulked. Plus, I haven't seen any sign of the treasure I was promised. We keep our treasure safe, Morosir rumbled, instead of an ostentatious display like the other tribes. He rubbed his forehead. Perhaps I could have done a better job of warning my tribe that you were here. Perhaps you could have, Viper snapped. The council had been told, but apparently the news hasn't spread. It's going to take some explaining to get Flame and Ochre out of the dungeon. Morosir tapped his claws on the rocks and tipped his head at Starflight. A clever way to foil their attackers, whether you intended it or not. It's not what I would have done, but it worked. Now, can we kill Fate Speaker instead? Viper asked. Sometimes you're just horrible, Fate Speaker said to her. Seems like you had an opportunity to kill him and didn't take it, Morosir said darkly. Look, destiny is destiny, Fate Speaker said. I don't know why you're so worried about who's in the prophecy. You delivered it, now you can sit back and watch it happen. Whether it's me or Starflight, who cares? The Nightwings care, said Morosir. The Queen has decreed that I should choose one of you and then kill the other. Fate Speaker opened and closed her mouth a few times. Really? She finally said in a small voice. Starflight felt sorry for her. Starting with what Glory had told him in the rainforest, he'd had a few days to adjust to how different Nightwings were from his expectations. Fate Speaker was getting it all thrown at her at once. Not today, though, said Morosir. For now, I'm moving you all to the fortress so I can keep an eye on you. He ended up dumping them in the same dormitory where Starflight had first woken up. Then, to Starflight's relief, Morosir stumped off to the evening council meeting without him. Are you sure you don't want to take me? Fate Speaker asked him. Starflight guessed she was hoping to meet other Nightwings, ones who might give her a better impression of the tribe than Morosir and Mastermind. Very sure. Stay here. Morosir growled at her, and tried to speak as little as possible. She watched him leave, her wings drooping. "I was hoping to see the queen," she said to Starflight. "You heard, Mastermind. Nobody sees the queen." He shook his head. "It looked to me like she does everything through her daughter, Greatness." Which was something else Starflight needed more time to think about. He suspected there was more to that story. He wondered if he should try talking to Fate Speaker about the Nightwing's plan. Maybe she'd be willing to help him stop it. He knew she felt sorry for the trapped Rainwings she'd seen, but no matter how sympathetic she was, would she be willing to betray her tribe? There was no time to talk to her anyway. As soon as Morosir was gone, Starflight and Fate Speaker and Viper and Squid were swarmed by the Nightwing Dragonettes who lived in the dormitory. "Hello!" Fate Speaker chirped. Hi, it's nice to meet you all." "Oh, so you're the other one," Fierce Teeth said, sniffing her. "You don't look that great either." "Look at all the colors," Mindreader said, poking Squid's green wings. "Shiny!" "Don't touch me," he whined. "Viper, make him stop." The Sandwing ignored him. She brandished her tail until the Nightwing Dragonettes got out of the way, then stormed to a sleeping spot at the farthest end of the dormitory and curled up on the stone. Exhaustion was starting to overwhelm Starflight. He left Fate Speaker while she was introducing herself to everyone and lay down in the same place where he'd woken up a few hours before. He missed his friends. He wanted to be eating more with Clay, arguing with Tsunami, telling Glory about all his strange new discoveries, and warning her about the Nightwings. But mostly he missed Sunny. He missed her warm scales leaning against his, her green eyes watching him while he talked. He wanted to tell her about everything that had happened today, about the strange hunting habits of the Nightwings, the terrifying council chamber, the mysterious behavior of the Queen, and what he'd figured out about her secret plan. He wanted to tell her all about his father and the alternate Dragonettes, and his eyes closed and sleep came for him. Okay. On to chapter 9. Oh, it looks like we're going on for 2 or 3 more chapters. We're actually fast today, not gonna lie. Okay. Chapter 9. Starflight was dreaming, but it wasn't so much a dream as a memory. He was waiting by the cave entrance when Webbs rolled the boulder aside and came in. His wings unfurled and he leaned forward trying to see the guardian's claws. "Just one this time," Webbs said. Untangling a scroll from the net full of fish he was carrying, he tossed it to a Starflight, who caught it and turned it reverently between his talons. It was damp around the edges and smelled like fish, but he didn't care. He carried it to the study cave and found Sunny curled in a small beam of sunlight that came through the hole in the roof. His heart skipped a beat as she opened her green eyes and smiled at him. "A new scroll?" she said. "What's this one about?" He sat down next to her and unrolled it carefully. "It's about us." His eyes scanned the next text quickly. "Oh, weird. This must have been written recently. It's all theories about where we are and who might be part of the prophecy and how it might come true." Sunny sat up and peered over his shoulder, her warm, golden scales pressing against his. "Wow, I'd like to know all that myself. It says there were 17 sea-wing dragonettes who hatched on the brightest night, but only 6 of them were from blue eggs, and maybe it's none of them because perhaps there were other sea-wing eggs outside the kingdom of the sea. Like children of the talons of peace, it says. Or an egg that was stolen by the talons, Sunny pointed out. Right, it doesn't mention that possibility. Starflight went quiet, reading a little further. Does it say anything about a sandwing egg? She asked nervously. The author seems confused about that. Starflight rolled the scroll along, searching for references to sandwings. He says if a sandwing dragonet hatched on its own in the desert somewhere, it couldn't have survived, so it must be someone's egg. Maybe from the talons of peace again. That would explain hidden away from the rival queens. I wish the guardians would tell us more about where our eggs came from, Sunny said with a sigh. Maybe I should skip ahead to the part about stopping the war, Starflight said, rolling the scroll through his talons. Good idea, we're taking suggestions, she joked. Any war-stopping tips are welcomed over here. Starflight paused on the word Skywing. It says something about how there aren't any Skywings left who were hatched on the brightest night. What? That's weird. There must be some in the Sky Kingdom. Maybe this author doesn't know what he's talking about. He kept reading, hoping to keep Sunny close to him for as long as possible. We don't need the Skywing anyway, she said. We've got Glory. Isn't it exciting that there are dragons talking about us all over Pyria? She added dreamily. Right now there are soldiers camped on battlefields talking about how we're the ones who will save them from the endless fighting. There are dragonets who want their mothers and fathers to come home, and they know we're the ones who will make it happen. We're going to make so many dragons happy, Starflight. She shifted her wings and shrugged like she was trying to sound too dramatic. I mean, I don't know. It's just nice to know for sure that we're here for a reason and we're going to do something important. Starflight liked the way Sunny thought about the prophecy. The idea of that many dragons relying on him always made Starflight feel overwhelmed and anxious, but for Sunny, the prophecy was a promise, not an order. Listening to her talk about it was comforting. Here, he said, possible ways for the dragonets to fulfill the prophecy. Alright, the first theory is that all the dragonets are royal daughters, so they'll all become queens of their tribes and stop the war that way. Sunny smothered a giggle. I can totally see Clay as a Mudwing princess. He grinned back. It doesn't make sense, though, without an Icewing, and it means you'd have to be the next Sandwing queen. No, thank you, Sunny said firmly. I'm not Tsunami. I would never want to be queen. Starflight didn't like the idea either, although the part that bothered him was the thought of Sunny being challenged by vicious Sandwings who wanted to be queen in her place. Alright, let's find the next, he started, when suddenly a commotion of running claws sounded from the tunnel. They both looked up as Kestrel burst into the room with Dune and Webs right behind her. Give me that! Kestrel snarled, snatching the scroll out of Starflight's talons. He let out a cry of dismay as it tore between their claws. The Skywing peered at the scroll, then whipped around to glare at Webs. What were you thinking, handing them any piece of trash you find on the beach? The fish steadily gave it to me, Webb said defensively. She knows I'm always looking for a new scrolls. I didn't have time to read it, but I didn't think it sounded that bad. Where are the Dragonets of Destiny? Kestrel read off the title. That doesn't sound dangerous to you? Filling their heads with questions and ideas? Our heads are already full of questions and ideas, Sunny piped up. We'll tell you what you need to know about the prophecy, Kestrel growled at Sunny and Starflight. You don't need a pile of gossip and rumors and speculation cluttering up your tiny little minds. Starflight's mind isn't at all tiny or little, Sunny objected. She glanced at Starflight, and when he didn't say anything, she whispered, "Hey, your line is, neither is Sunny's." Starflight knew she was trying to make him feel better, but he was too nervous to speak. Why were the guardians so mad? Had he done something wrong? "This is not for you," Castle snapped. Waving the scroll, she pointed it at Starflight. "You! Battle training now!" She turned and stomped out of the cave with the other guardians close behind her. Sunny ran to the entranceway, then turned back to Starflight with a comically outraged look on her face. "Are you just going to let her do that?" she said. "She took your scroll. That's so unfair." Starflight thought so too, but he definitely was not going to argue with Kestrel. "It's all right," he said, looking down at the grey rocks below his talons. "Hopefully Webbs will bring a new scroll next week." "Oh, Starflight, I know you're trying to hide it, but you're so sad now," Sunny said. She came and sat in front of him, reaching to touch his tail with her own. "Listen, that scroll wasn't going to have all the answers anyway. You know that, right? Nobody knows how the prophecy will unfold. We just have to always do what we think is right, and fate will take us in the right direction." "Maybe," he said, "but a map on how to get there would be helpful." "You don't need a map," she said, "when you have excellent traveling companions, like Clay, Tsunami, and Glory. And of course, me," she beamed at him. "That's true," he said, feeling again how lucky he was. Of all the kids in all of Pyria, of all the eggs that could have been chosen, somehow his and hers had wound up here. And two dragons who would never should have met were together. And that's how it will always be, he thought. Starflight walked up to find a claw poking his snout. He mumbled. Everything was still and dark in the dormitory. The coal smoldered in the small niches like the half-closed eyes of slumbering dragons. The skylight looked out into a night with no stars. The warmth from his dream faded instantly. Sunny was far away, and he had no idea when he'd ever see her again. "I can't sleep," Faye's speaker whispered in the dark. Her wings rustled as she edged closer to him and poked his shoulder again. "What are you doing?" Said Starflight. "Sleeping?" "Let's go explore," she said. "I want to know more about our tribe, don't you? We can go look around the whole fortress while they're asleep." He rubbed his eyes and blinked at her. "Won't we get in trouble?" "Why?" she said. "Nobody's told us not to. We're Nightwings, aren't we? Isn't this our fortress too? Let's explore it before someone tells us we can't." There was a kind of logic to that, although Starflight wasn't sure Morrison would agree with it. But really, she was right. Why should they get in trouble for acting like they belonged here? Besides, it was what Tsunami would do, and wasn't he always thinking he wanted to be more like her? He rolled off the bed onto the floor next to Faith's speaker, and they padded softly out into the tunnels. She picked a direction apparently at random, and they started to walk the empty halls. The only sound was the tapping of their own claws and the slithering of their tails on the stone. "Don't be scared," Starflight told himself, and then told himself again a few more times. "You're not doing anything wrong. There aren't any dangers lying in wait for you. You're not being treated like a prisoner. You're a Nightwing Dragonet. This is your tribe. This is where you could have grown up." He glanced at the bare walls, not so very different from the cave where he had grown up. "This is where you're supposed to be." "No, I'm supposed to be where Sunny is. I'm supposed to be helping my friends stop the war." He stopped walking for a minute, take a deep breath, then hurried after Fate's speaker. All the torches had been extinguished, so the only light came from the glowing red coals in the walls. Starflight couldn't even see any of the moons when he looked out of the windows. The sky was too hidden by the clouds and smoke from the volcano. He knew they wouldn't find much that might be useful unless he was brave enough to open a door sometime, but he was terrified of waking up and his sleeping nightwings. He kept imagining walking straight into Morosier's room and stepping on his tail by accident, and the death of dismemberment or both that would no doubt inevitably follow. He was glad to see that Fate's speaker wasn't going in the direction of his father's lab. Mastermind was surely sleeping like the rest of the tribe, but Starflight didn't want to risk encountering him or get any closer to the things he'd seen in there. Every once in a while, as they walked, they heard a quiet snore from the rooms they were passing. But they saw no one awake, no guards anywhere. "I guess they're used to not needing guards," Starflight whispered. Since no other tribe could find this place, they were always safe from attack. He thought for a minute. And even now that they might be attacked, they only need to post guards at the tunnel. "I'm surprised everyone is asleep, though," Fate's speaker whispered back. "I always thought being a Nightwing meant you wanted to be awake all the night. I mean, that's true of me. I can never wake up in the morning, but once it's dark, I'm full of energy. Does that happen to you? I really thought that was a Nightwing thing, but maybe my friends are right and I'm just weird." She kicked a rock sticking out of a crack in the floor. Or maybe it is a Nightwing thing and they're all muddled here because they can't really see the night sky anymore. Starflight said, "Maybe you're more of a Nightwing than any of them." She fluttered her wings, looking skeptical. "As for me, I lived in a cave with no sky most of my life, so I was on whatever schedule our guardians told us to be. But once we were free, well, it's been a strange few weeks, so it's hard to say. But I do feel more alive when the stars are out. Does that make sense?" "It does," she said, smiling at him. She paused at an intersection, thinking, and then purposefully turned right. "Are we going somewhere?" He asked her. "Did you see the part of the fortress that collapsed?" she asked. "I wanted to see what it looks like from inside." He stopped, his heart rattling nervously. "Wait," he said. "It collapsed because it was covered in lava. That can't be safe to explore." She flicked his nose with her tail. "Oh, stop worrying. Mighty Claus told me it happened like 11 years ago. It's just a bunch of rocks now, and he said it's kind of neat looking. I guess it's covered the part of a fortress where they used to keep their treasure, so they had to blast tunnels into it and to get their treasures out." "Tunnels! In lava rocks? It'll be awesome, come on!" She bounded ahead and he followed, more slowly, wishing he'd listened to his original story, stay in bed instincts. Fate's speaker's sense of direction turned out to be than her sense about dragons. And before long they found themselves in a part of the fortress where the roof was partly gone. What looked like thick black bubbles of rock filled the hole ahead of them. Chilly air whistled through the gaps in the walls, battling with the heat from the volcano below their talons. "There!" Fate's speaker whispered, darting up to where the petrified lava met the wall. A tunnel just big enough for the dragon had been chiseled and blasted and dug out of the rocks. Without any hesitation, she headed inside. "What am I doing?" Starflight asked himself. He really desperately wanted to melt into the shadows and stay there waiting for her, but he also felt as though she couldn't go in there alone. And this time, There was no clay or tsunami or glory to do the brave thing for him. He was the only dragon Fate Speaker had. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to step into the small tunnel. Jagged rock pressed in from all the sides, scraping his wings and the top of his head. The tunnel twisted quickly downward, so they had to dig their claws into avoiding sliding. Fate Speaker breathed a small plume of fire, but all that did was illuminate the thick, dark walls that encircled him. The air was hot and stuffy, and Starflight began to wonder if anyone had ever died exploring these tunnels. Suddenly, the tunnel turned directly down and dumped them out into an empty space. Fate Speaker fell first, letting out a shout of surprise, so Starflight had a minute's warning and was able to open his wings as soon as his claws lost their grip on the floor. Still, he tumbled several feet and landed on top of her. "Oof," she said. He scrambled away and they both lit up the air with their fire at the same time. The room was small but intact. The lava had crushed the upper floors but left this one preserved. Starflight could see a small hallway outside the door with more rooms beyond that. He looked up uneasily, thinking about the weight of everything above them. Fate Speaker was already hurrying to the doorway as the fire faded into complete darkness. Mighty Claus said, "The old treasure room is 3 doors down on the left. Come on!" "But isn't it empty?" Starflight asked, following her with his front talons outstretched. "Are we just going to look at an empty room?" "A fascinating empty room," she insisted. "It used to be full of treasure. Just imagine. I've never even seen any treasure before." "Oh, right," Starflight said. "The talons of peace wouldn't have any, I guess, unless some dragons brought it with them when they left the tribe. If anyone did, they keep it hidden," she said. He felt her tail flick against his snout accidentally as they both felt their way along the walls. "You didn't have treasure in your hiding under the mountain place, did you?" "No, but I've been to the Sky Kingdom and the Kingdom of the Sea," Starflight said. "And I saw enough treasure there to know that having lots of treasure doesn't make you a good queen or a happy tribe." "I thought Queen Coral was a good queen," Fate Speaker said, sounding surprised. "Well, keep in mind she wrote a lot of the scrolls you probably read about her," Starflight said. "But she's not terrible. She's better than Queen Scarlet, that's for sure." Or who had been so disgusted with him? "I bet the Sandwings would be happier if they could find the treasure that scavengers stole, though," Fate Speaker said. "Maybe," Starflight said. There were some really famous pieces of treasure in there, including stuff that was rumored to be Animus touched." "Animus touched?" Fate Speaker stopped and breathed fire again. They were standing under a tall archway with 2 black metal doors, one of which was propped open just enough for a dragonet to slip through. "Animus touched means an object that's been magicked by an Animus dragon," Starflight explained in the helpful teacher voice he sometimes used with his friends. "So, the object is left with some kind of power, like a necklace that can make you invisible, or a stone that can find anyone you're looking for, or a statue that will kill any heir to the Sea-Wing throne it can get its claws on." It's sort of an archaic term because supposedly there aren't any Animus dragons anymore, but that's clearly not true. There's at least one among the Sea-Wings, and there There must have been one not long ago among the Nightwings. Really? Fate Speaker pushed lightly on the metal door, and it groaned open another inch. He realized he didn't know how much she knew about the Nightwing Island. Yes, there's a tunnel from here to the rainforest, and one from the rainforest to the Kingdom of Sand, which must have been made by an animus dragon, he said. I guess I can't be sure how long ago it was, but none of the Rainwings knew about them. Isn't that how you got here? She shook her head. We flew across the ocean. It was so long and so boring. I swear I nearly fell asleep and ended up in the sea a couple of times. He perked up, full of geography questions, but she was already squeezing into the room and making whoa noises. He squashed himself through the door behind her and saw in the plume of fire she sent out a couple of wooden sticks on the floor. He picked one up and lit it so they could look around more easily. But when he lifted it up, the first thing they both saw were the shriveled corpses of two dead dragons. Oh, we're so fast, we're already in chapter 10. Okay. Hello, Nashter, good morning. Ohayo, Nash. Welcome to the stream. Bakit ang bilis natin ngayon? Ang bilis natin na maybe we could read like 1 or 2 more chapters depending on the time. I'm still not that sleepy, but I need to make sure that all of you are sleepy already. That's the plan. It's going great so far. You actually missed chapter 6, 7, and 8. Ang inabot mo lang is partially to the end of chapter 9. So, yeah. Ayun. Okay. That's the plan. I'm gonna make all of you sleepy by reading you guys a book. Apparently, I like in every chapters. Goodness gracious. But yeah. Anyways, on to chapter 10. You know what? I'm gonna change the stream title. I'm gonna remove chapter 6 to 10 and I'm gonna update the title because yes. Okay. There you go. That's better. Okay. Chapter 10. Starflight clapped his talons over Fate Speaker's mouth mid-shriek. You'll bring the mountain down on top of us, he whispered, and she snapped her mouth shut. He glanced down at the two midnight black bodies. Don't worry, these two have been dead a long time, he added, probably since the volcano erupted. When he released her, she whispered, How did they die? Starflight lifted the torch again and peered a little closer, although he really didn't want to. A spear lay beside one of the Nightwings, but it was an ordinary spear, not the creepy hooked and pronged kind all the guards carried now. Neither of them wore armor either. Suffocation, I bet, he answered, or starvation, or heat. All the dragons can withstand a fair amount of heat. My guess is they were guarding the treasure when the eruption happened and they were trapped here. Nobody could come find them until the lava cooled enough to make the tunnel we crawled through, and by then it was too late. Fate Speaker shook herself from horns to tail. How incredibly awful. Starflight turned to look around the room, which, as he'd predicted, was otherwise empty. Bare shelves lined all the walls, reaching up to the ceiling, and large urns stood in the two back corners. You could imagine that they had once been filled to the brim with gold and jewels. He caught himself thinking, a giant urn full of gold and jewels would be kind of cool to have, which was ridiculous. Just his dragon's instincts talking. What would he do with that much gold? Unless it could get him back to his friends or stop the war, it would be useless to him. Something went ping at the back of his mind, but before he could figure it out, Fate Speaker said, "Maybe you should go." "I think so," Starflight said. "I don't know how much air is down here, but I don't want to find out by running out of it." "Yikes," she said, her eyes widening. "That's all you had to say?" She turned and scooted out of the room faster than he'd ever seen her move before. He'd take a step to follow her, and the torchlight flashed on something small and bright in one of the corpse's talons. Starflight hesitated. A piece of treasure that was left behind. Something they missed. Because who want to search a corpse? Well, not him, not particularly. But he felt as if it was calling to him, as if it had been waiting for him these 11 years, hiding from anyone else who came along until the right dragon arrived. "Now you sound like Sunny with her faith in fate and destiny and science and magic. So if taking the lost jewel was what she'd want him to do." He braced himself, reached down, and plucked it from the dead guard's claws. Rough dead scales scraped against his, and he shuddered so badly he nearly dropped the gemstone, but instead he gripped it harder and jumped back, knocking against the shelves behind him. The claws were left clutching the air, as if hanging onto the memory of treasure would have had to be enough. Now Starflight felt fairly sick, but when he held up the torch and glanced down, he realized he had done the right thing. The blue star-shaped sapphire glinted into his talons with a tiny inner spark of its own light. He'd only ever read about these. There were supposedly 3 of them in the world, all lost, all created hundreds of years ago by a sand-winged animus dragon, a dream visitor. He closed his claws around it. With this, he could see his friends again. "Starflight?" Fate Speaker called. "Coming," he said. He couldn't risk anyone finding their dream visitor and taking it from him. Not even Fate Speaker could know about it. He put it in his mouth, tucked down between his teeth and his scales, and pressed his tongue over it. On the way back to the dormitory, Fate Speaker asked why he was so quiet, but he just shook his head and mumbled that he was tired. He shrugged and headed off to her own bed once they were back inside. Starflight pulled out the rough blanket he'd been given and arranged it so he could huddle underneath it. The heavy brown fabric caught on his horns and smelled like smoke, but it would keep him hidden from any eyes that might still be awake. He caught the dream visitor in his talons and stared at it, trying to remember if he'd read anything about how they worked. Perhaps I just think of the dragon whose dreams I want to visit. Surely Sunny would be asleep right now, in the middle of the night. If he remembered right, he should be able to step into whatever she was already dreaming about. And if she were in the deepest level of dream sleep, she'd see him and they could talk to each other. But if her sleep was shallow or uneasy, he might be able to see in. But she wouldn't know how he was really there. And she were awake. It wouldn't work at all, of course. He closed his eyes and pictured Sunny, her laugh that made Everyone else laughed too. Her flares of temper that vanished as quickly as they came. Her small claws and fierce protective face. Her scales like rippled sunshine. The way she looked like no other dragon on Pyria. If she were here, she'd know exactly what to say about his father. She'd tell him what to tell the Nightwings about Glory and how to talk them out of hurting Rainwings forever. But no matter how hard he concentrated, his mind stayed firmly in the Nightwing dormitory instead of finding her dreams. Maybe she was awake. Maybe she was in the rainforest somewhere, looking at the moons, wondering if he was looking at them too. He tried Glory next, then Clay, then Tsunami. Nothing happened. He couldn't reach any of them. Starflight squeezed the Dream Visitor between his claws, grinding his teeth. This had to work, unless it wasn't really a Dream Visitor, but it certainly looked like one. Try a Rainwing. They're always asleep. The first Rainwing who came to mind was Kinkajou, the little dragon that Glory had rescued from the Nightwings. Starflight focused on her enormous dark eyes and quick changing skills. He pressed the Dream Visitor to his forehead, praying that this would work. And suddenly, he was perched on a branch in the rainforest. Starflight took a deep, relieved breath. But he still inhaled the smoke of the dormitory. He could see the rainforest, but he couldn't smell it. Unfortunately for him, Kinkajou was curled on a giant leaf beside him with her eyes closed. There was a bandage of soft leaves and moss wrapped around one of her wings, and piles of red and yellow and purple fruits all around her, like offerings to a statue. Her scales were a strangely pale shade of blue in the moonlight, and she breathed shallowly as even in her sleep. She knew a deeper breath would make something hurt. What happened to you? Starflight wondered aloud, but she didn't wake up. He turned to find another dragon staring right through him. For a startled, terrifying moment, Starflight thought the dragon could see him, but then he realized she was just watching Kinkajou. She was old, older than any of the guardians or queens he'd met so far, and she had that loyal elegance about her that he'd noticed greatness lacking. Starflight turned back to Kinkajou. How could he get inside her dreams? He looked down at the Dream Visitor and remembered pressing it to his own forehead. Carefully, he leaned over and rested the sapphire between Kinkajou's eyes. The first time he tried, he nearly fell right through her. Since he wasn't really there, he couldn't touch her or anything around her. But when he tried a second time, holding the Dream Visitor where he thought it should go, he felt a thrum of energy radiate from Kinkajou through the jewel to him and back again. And then he saw what he saw. In Kinkajou's dream, she was standing in bright sunlight in a wide green bowl laced with brightly colored flowers, surrounded by thousands of rainwings, more rainwings that there could possibly be on the whole continent, all of them staring at her with expressions of disdain that Starflight had never seen in real life on any rainwing. Glory was there in the center of the bowl, but this Glory was impossibly big and impossibly beautiful, and a crown of orange hibiscus gold chain and rubies sparkled atop her head. That's how Kinkajou sees her, Starflight thought. This Glory smiled more too, at least at Kinkajou. A crown, he thought suddenly. Does it mean Glory won? Is she now Queen of the Rainwings, or is this a wishful dream? Kinkajou backed away from the stares of the dragons until she reached the far edge of the bowl. Suddenly, she turned and leaped off, spreading her wings. But instead of soaring away through the trees, she fell, plummeting like a coconut toward the ground below her. Her wings flapped helplessly, and when she twisted to look at them, giant holes appeared all over her wings, spreading as though acid was eating them away. Kinkajou screamed and clawed at the air. Starflight watched helplessly from above as a greenery swallowed her up. "It's just a dream," he told himself, but his racing heart didn't believe him. "Just a dream, nothing you could do. He didn't even see you here." He wouldn't be able to reach her in a dream like this, where her emotions were so strong. It was really strange to be in someone else's nightmare. So different from the others one had almost every night. His own anxiety dreams usually involved the Nightwing Queen telling him that dragonauts who weren't telepathic were not welcome in the tribe. The dayscape around him shuddered and then suddenly went dark. "She's waking up!" Starflight dug his talons into the tree branch below him, even though he couldn't see it now, and he also knew it wasn't really there. Or rather, he wasn't really there. He wanted to hold on to the rainforest as long as he could. He didn't want to go back to the gloomy Nightwing dormitory. "Stay asleep," he thought desperately. "Please see me. I need to send a message to my friends." Now he could see a faint outlines of shapes in the darkness, as if it was very early morning and the sun was rising far away. In front of him, Kinkajou was curled on the leaf again, still asleep, but twitching restlessly. A silvery shaft of moonlight lit up the expression of pain on her face. She'd snapped out of the nightmare into a shallow sleep with no dreams, where she was aware of everything around her without being fully awake. He could be here, but she wouldn't see him. Not now. "Another nightmare?" said a quiet voice behind him. Starflight whirled around, his heart leaping into his throat. Sunny. The Sandwing was just landing on the branch beside the Queen Rainwing. Her golden wings folded in, and she flipped her tail over her back talons the way she always did. A moment later, a glint of blue scales appeared through the trees behind Sunny. Tsunami, flapping down to land next to her. "I think so," said the older Rainwing. "I wasn't sure whether to wake her. How is the Queen?" "Mad," said Sunny. "Super mad. I keep telling her there's no way Starflight went to the Nightwings on his own, but she's convinced he's betrayed us." Shock rippled through the Starflight's wings. It hadn't occurred to him that his friends would think he'd left them on purpose. "The Queen? Does she mean Glory? Glory thinks I betrayed them?" Then he remembered telling the Nightwing Council that the Rainwings were planning to attack, and his scales felt hot with the shame. He may have been abducted, but he hadn't done anything to help his friends since he got here. He hadn't tried to escape. He hadn't even argued with Morosir or tried to stop the Nightwings. Maybe he really didn't belong in the prophecy. Maybe Fatespeaker was the better dragon to save the world. "Starflight!" Tsunami snorted. "Of all dragons, like he'd ever betray us. Can you actually imagine how it could have happened? First making a decision not exactly Starflight's forte. Then actually doing something instead of sitting and waiting for it to happen to him. And not just anything, jumping into a dark hole with angry dragons on the other side. Starflight, are you kidding me? Starflight! "Oh my gosh, stop it!" Sunny said. "You've been arguing with Glory all day. You don't have to convince me that Starflight wouldn't do something like this." She hopped down to Kinkajou's side, nearly passing right through Starflight. He shivered and leaned toward her, He could almost imagine he felt the warmth of her skills as she went by. You don't think he chose to go to the Night Kingdom? Asked the dragon. Starflight didn't know. Sun looked up at the 2 moons that were visible through the canopy, then back down at Kinkajou. If he went, then I'm sure it was for a good reason. But if he didn't choose to go, then he needs our help, right? Tsunami, isn't that an important thing? Shouldn't we go get him right now before something terrible happens to him? She bent to examine the bandage on Kinkajou's wing. Yes, Starflight thought frantically. Please, hurry. If it were up to me, the 4 of us would be there now. Tearing the place apart, Tsunami growled, instead of wasting our time here. Combat training didn't go well? Asked the other dragon. Tsunami lashed her tail so hard she nearly fell off the branch. General, may I take a nap? General, I need a papaya. General, my claws are tired. General, look, a butterfly. Somebody's getting stabbed in the face if you don't shut up. Sandy smothered a giggle. When does a queen want to attack? The older dragon bared her teeth as though she was ready to go right now. Oh, look, Sunny interrupted, touching her front talons lightly to Kinkajou's head. She's waking up. No. Starflight saw Kinkajou's eyes flutter. He reached out, holding the dream visitor, trying to send her back into dream sleep, but it was too late. With a wrenching sideways jolt, the rainforest and Kinkajou and Tsunami and Sunny was ripped away, and Starflight found himself lying on cold stone once again. The thick canvas lay heavy on his horns, and the dim red light of the coast pulsed beyond it, making his eyes ache. Sunny had been right there, inches from him, so close, and yet she might as well have been on one of the moons. He stared down at the dim visitor that glowed faintly in his talons. Seeing them had somehow been even worse than not seeing them. My friends think I betrayed them, or if they don't, they think it's because I'm too much of a coward to do something like that. He closed his eyes, feeling lonelier than he had ever felt in his life. Let me take a break. I'm gonna self-hydrate, guys. Okay. We're going to finish last 2 chapters, even though we said we're going to read chapter 6 to 10. It's better that we read 2 more chapters. Okay? Ready? Okay. Chapter 11. The blanket was ripped off Starflight's head with such force that he tumbled onto the floor. His head spun for a moment, but his first thought was that he was glad he'd hidden the dream visitor well the night before. Up! Morseer snarled. His breath was fiercely awful this morning. At least Starflight assumed it was morning, although the sky was barely lighter than it had been the night before. Flame and Ochre stood sullenly behind the giant Nightwing, glaring at Starflight. He hoped they had to spend the night in the dungeon. Fate's Speaker came bounding over to join them, followed more slowly by Viper and Squid. All around the dormitory, Nightwing Dragonets were poking their heads out of their blankets, watching. Fierce teeth looked openly envious. Smoke rose from her snout and her tail twitched angrily. Morose here didn't even look at the other Nightwing Dragonets. "Let's go," he ordered. His tail nearly knocked Starflight over as he turned swept out of the room. "Where are we going?" Fate Speaker asked cheerfully. She seemed to have recovered from the news that either she or Starflight were slated for death. "To see if it's worth spending any more time on you," said Morosier. "Certain dragons think we should lock you all up until we sort out our renewing problem, but I think you need as much training as possible, starting as soon as possible. So, today we'll have another test." "A test?" Starflight echoed, flapping his wings. "On what? We hadn't had time to study. Shouldn't we review the materials first?" Morosier looked over his shoulder at Starflight. "Sometimes it is very hard not to bite you," he growled. Well, that's hardly fair, Starflight thought, but he decided not to say anything else. Usually, he was pretty good at tests. Maybe this was finally his chance to earn a place in the prophecy, especially if it's about history. "I read all the history scrolls several times, each." He noticed that Flame was still glaring at him with resentful orange eyes. Carefully, Starflight maneuvered so that Fate Speaker was walking between him, and the hostile Skywing Dragonet. The six of them trailed after Morosier all the way to a roof of the fortress that faced the small island fortress. Morosier spread his wings and narrowed his eyes at the sky, which was dark gray and flickered with faraway lightning. In the distance, the clouds seemed to be pouring down into the ocean. A storm-out sea, Starflight thought. He shuddered, remembering the storm that had nearly flooded the cave in the Kingdom of the Sea. Clay had been chained to the wall and Glory, and Sunny had been so determined not to leave him. If Tsunami hadn't come for them, they probably wouldn't have decided to drown along with Clay. Starflight wasn't sure he'd have been able to do that. He'd been too scared to say anything, watching the water slowly rising toward them. "Stay close to me," Morosier growled. He jabbed Starflight in the neck with one claw. "Don't try anything." And then he lifted into the sky without any more explanation or instructions. It took Starflight a moment to figure out that they were leaving the island. Back to the mainland? He leaped into the air, his heart jumping hopefully at the same time. "Wait!" Squid called in a complaining whine, flapping after Morosier. "We haven't even had breakfast. You're not going to make me fly on an empty stomach, are you?" "Because I will die. I will literally die." "You won't actually. Not for a while," Starflight informed him. "Most dragons can naturally survive for up to a month without eating, if necessary, according to a natural history of unnatural dragon abilities." "Listen to the scrollworm," Flame said nastily. "Isn't he clever?" "I will never go a whole month without eating," Oko said passionately. "Is one of the unnatural abilities being really annoying?" Viper asked. "Because there should be a whole chapter on you and Fate Speaker." "You don't even know me," Starflight pointed out. "I was just trying to help." "I thought it was interesting," Fate Speaker said. "And probably useful, if the Nightwings keep feeding us the horrible stuff they've been bringing out so far." "Oh, I have a theory about that." As it flew over the forest and out across the ocean, Starflight told her about how the Nightwings hunted and his ideas about the bacteria in their mouths, and how he and Fate Speaker probably didn't have it, since they'd grown up eating live or recently killed prey and hadn't developed the bacteria like the Nightwing Dragonets on the island would have. "Wow!" said Fate Speaker, looking genuinely fascinated. "Is this the test?" Viper asked. "Listen to you for as long as we can without dying of boredom?" Nobody's talking to you, Viper, Fate Speaker said. Go be grumpy at Squid and leave Starflight alone. Starflight glanced down at the waves rushing below him. The island was disappearing behind them, visible only as a red glow in the sky. Ahead of them was nothing but sea as far as the distant horizon. He had no idea how Morosir was navigating. There were no landmarks and the sky was still hidden behind the clouds. I should pay attention so I can fly this way, if I ever get a chance to escape. Actually, what he should do was try to escape once they reached the mainland. Just fly away, hide, try to get back to the rainforest. He could not in a million years imagine doing any of that by himself. Maybe with Tsunami and Clay and Glory and Sunny, but alone? It sounded much safer to stay with the Nightwings and hope someone came to rescue him. Rain began to fall, or rather, they reached the edge of the storm, and Starflight realized that Morosir planned to fly right through it. My wings are getting wet, Squid gripped. Boo-hoo, you poor sea wing, Flame snapped. Starflight wasn't about to say anything aloud, but the rain made his wings heavier and it's much harder to fly. He didn't have the strongest flying muscles anyway. Being raised in a cave meant not much opportunity to practice. He clenched his jaw and flew on. If this was a test, he refused to fail. He would fly until his wings gave out, and he would not let anyone see how much it hurt. Think of Sunny. Think about being the dragon you want her to think you are. The sea kept getting closer, which he knew meant he was drooping. The rain pelted down harder and harder, battering his scales and making it almost impossible to see Ochre flying just ahead of him. Morosir was a dark blur in the clouds. Starflight hoped they didn't lose him. He hoped Morosir wasn't trying to lose them, because it wouldn't be hard in this weather. A bolt of lightning sizzled through the sky, followed instantly by the loudest thunderclap Starflight had ever heard. His whole body shook with vibrations. I hope we get there soon. I hope we get there soon. He blinked away raindrops and realized with sickening lurch that the sky ahead of him was empty. Where are the other dragons? For a horrible moment, he was completely lost. Then Fate Speaker appeared at his side and nudged his wing. Down there! She shouted over the wind. What looked like a small smudge on the ocean turned out to be a tiny rocky island. Morosir and the others were perched there already. Starflight landed awkwardly next to Squid, who had his wings over his head and was muttering angrily. Halfway there! Fate Speaker grinned at him. Only halfway? Starflight's resolution wavered, and he stared down at his claws. He was too exhausted even to ask all the questions brimming inside him. How had the Nightwings found their island? If it was this far from the mainland, how often did they go to the mainland? And did they usually use the tunnel to the rainforest or fly over the sea like this? He guessed most of them would choose the tunnel if they could, rather than risk this exhausting flight. Morosir allowed them to rest for a short while. He didn't speak. His dark eyes glowed at all of them. And occasionally he glanced back in the direction of the volcano. All too soon he gathered himself and said, "Let's go!" And then they were all flying once again. Rain, thunder, aching wings, raindrops filled Starflight's eyes, lightning blazed too close to his tail. Off to his left, Squid was complaining loudly, but no one could hear him over the storm. Or else, no one had any energy to respond. Starflight was starting to think that drowning wouldn't be such a bad way to go, After all, when he saw Morrowseer tilt his wings and begin sailing downward, land had appeared in front of them quite suddenly. Starflight hadn't been able to see it through the clouds and rain. Now he saw a coastline with jagged cliffs, steep and rocky, and plunging straight into the sea. Behind them jutted sharp peaks like dragon's teeth, some of them tipped with snow, extending in a relentless line across the horizon, the claws of the clouds mountains. His heart sank. He'd hoped they were near the southern coast and the rainforest, but this had to be Pyrrhia's northern edge, where the skywings ruled. Too close to Queen Scarlet's palace, too far for him to fly back to his friends. It would take days and he'd have to travel alone through the Sky Kingdom and the Mud Kingdom. I'm sorry, Sonny. I can't do it. I can't find my way back to you. His wings felt like glaciers, slow and heavy, and dragging him down. As he followed Morrowseer and the others to the cliff top in the driving rain, bare rocks scraped beneath his claws when he landed, and he bent forward, gasping for breath. Squid sprawled out flat on his back, groaning with pain, and Ochre immediately began sniffing the rocks as if he were hoping to startle out some prey. Flame was the only dragonet who wasn't breathing heavily. Starflight looked up and caught Morrowseer studying the sea behind them again. He had a weird flash of intuition that made no sense. Is someone following us? He asked Morrowseer. That's none of your concern, Morrowseer answered. He spread his wings and pointed down the coast. Through the storm, Starflight could barely see the glow of firelight coming from a cave in the cliffside. What is it? Fatespeaker asked. The most remote outpost of the Skywing army, said Morrowseer. Their assignment is to guard against attacks from the north in case Queen Glacier ever decides to try this approach to the palace. There are no other dragons for miles. This is your test. They all stared at him, uncomprehending. What is? Starflight finally asked. The wind ripped his voice away. You want us to kill them? Viper guessed. She arched her poisonous tail and flexed her claws. All of them? I don't want to, Squid whined. What if someone bites me? Shut up or I'll bite you, Flame said. He looked deeply rattled, as if he'd never expected to be asked to kill members of his own tribe. Starflight wondered suddenly where all their parents were, and whether these dragonets dreamed of home and family the way his friends had. No, you're not here to kill them, Morrowseer snapped. You're the dragonets of the great prophecy, remember? Your test is to act like it. He pointed to the outpost. Go in there, tell the guards that you are the real prophesized dragonets, and convince them to switch their alliance from burn to blister. In the shocked silence that followed, a hurricane-forced wind came howling up and tried to throw them all off the cliff. Starflight dug in his talons and made himself as small as he could. Just convince them, Viper shouted at Morrowseer. Raindrops flying as she shook her head. A bunch of strange skywings, so instead of killing them, we're going to ask them to kill us. I foresee that this is going to go really, really badly, Fatespeaker yelled over the wind. Me too, cried Ochre. Maybe I have special Nightwing powers too. They're going to kill me, Squid shouted. Sea Wings and Skywings are enemies. If you send me in there, I'm dead. Morrowseer's expressions suggested that he wouldn't be terribly devastated by that. If you can't survive this, he rumbled, then you're useless for the prophecy anyway. He pointed at Fatespeaker. You stay here. We'll see how well that one does this time. He flicked a claw at Starflight. Starflight wanted to melt into the rocks. He wanted to leap off the cliff into the sea. He wondered how far he would get if he bolted for the mountains right now. Would the journey to the rainforest be any worse than walking into a skywing guardhouse and announcing himself as one of the dragonets Queen Scarlet had lost not long ago? "Won't they just take us prisoner," he asked Morosier, "and take us back to the Sky Palace?" "Not if you're convincing enough," Morosier said, baring his teeth. "Now go!" He shot a blast of fire at Squid, who barely leaped out of the way in time. "I don't want to," Squid complained again, but Viper and Flame were already shoving him forward. Awkward trailed after them, and Starflight reluctantly brought up to the rear. He glanced back once and saw Fate's spear huddled into her wings, a small drenched shape beside the vast bulk of Morosier. He hoped his friends would welcome her as a new Nightwing when he was gone. "I'm about to die," he thought, "and I never got to tell Sunny I love her. I'm going to die without saving the world, without stopping the war, without ever doing one brave thing in my life." Let's take a break. I'm gonna self-hydrate because I'm really thirsty. Past one chapter for this morning and we'll end the stream. Okay, chat? We'll stop at chapter 12 and then we'll try and go raid someone. Okay? Ready? Okay. Chapter 12. As they approached the firelight, Starflight's dread grew heavier and heavier. Loud dragon voices spilled from the cave along with a column of smoke that rose from a hole in the stone wall. "What if someone's on watch?" Starflight whispered when they were a few lengths away. They all froze. Starflight searched the darkness around them with his eyes, trying to move as little as possible. Lightning flashed, and Starflight's heart seized up. Perched on a cliff top above them was a dragon with enormous wings, staring out to sea. "There!" he whispered. Surely he could see them? Why hadn't he called out to warn the other souls yet? Starflight squinted at the shape, at the rise and fall of its shoulders and the curve of its neck, and he realized that the guard was asleep. Despite the rain pouring down on him, despite the booming thunder, despite his whole job being to stay awake. "We're all right," he whispered to the others. They crept toward the cave, staying closer to the shadows now. A wooden door blocked the entrance. "Wait," Starflight whispered. Flame paused with his front talons, raised to knock. He frowned at Starflight. "Let's be smart about this," Starflight said. "You don't have to charge right in. Let's listen for a minute and see if we hear anything that might be useful." "Fine by me," Ochre said with a shrug. "But it's wet out here," Squid grumbled. Flame and Viper exchanged glances, and then to Starflight's surprise, they both nodded. Perhaps fear made them more agreeable. The two of them put their ears up to the wooden door, so he crept along the wall and crouched below the smoke hole. He tried to arrange his wings in a way that would shield him at least a little bit from the rain. There seemed to be several arguments going on inside. Starflight could only catch snatches of one that seemed to be closest to the fire. "If Queen Ruby says we can return to the palace, you better believe I'm going home," growled one dragon. "You'd be obeying the orders of a false queen," snarled another. "Queen Scarlet is still alive, and she's and she'll have us all killed if we abandon our posts." "Then, where is she?" challenged a third voice. "What kind of queen leaves her kingdom in chaos like this?" "It's not chaos. We have Ruby now," said the first voice. "And she says we can leave." "But Queen Bern says we shouldn't," said another dragon. "She's not our queen," snapped more than one voice. "That's enough. No one's going anywhere today." Boom! Someone authoritative sounding. The hubbub of voices stilled. "Not in this storm. We'll discuss it again tomorrow." After a moment, a murmur of grumbling and muttering started, but nothing that Starflight could pick out. He crept back to Flame and Viper. "Useless," Flame hissed. "Perhaps not," Starflight said. "Did you hear how some of them are dissatisfied with Bern? We can press that, I think. If she's trying to act like she's their new queen, I bet a whole lot of Skywings would be willing to reconsider their alliance." "Fancy talk," said Viper, flicking her tail at him. "Now let's see you actually do it." She shoved Squid away from the shadow of her wings, where he was trying to huddle. Flame rapped on the door before Starflight could think of another way to delay. All the noise inside abruptly stopped. Stamping feet approached the door, and it was flung wide open. Starflight found himself facing a room full of Skywings. Most of them were clumped in small groups, eating or rolling prey bones in games of luck. Red, orange, and gold scales gleamed in the firelight. Savage-looking spears leaned casually against a wall, and the map next to the fireplace showed the continent of Pyria with an X where the outpost was located and arrows showing possible attack routes from the Ice Kingdom. "What in the—" said the guard who had answered the door. He turned off, staring at them. The whole room, about 17 dragons, Starflight estimated, turned to stare as well. Starflight could easily imagine how they looked. 5 bedraggled dragonets, soaking wet and exhausted, in 5 different colors they were normally not seen together. One of the Skywings inhaled sharply. "It's them!" he hissed. "It can't be," said another. For some reason, Flame, Viper, and Ochre all glanced at Starflight, but his power of speech had abandoned him. All he could think about was the cold spire where he'd been imprisoned by Skywing guards, just like this only a short time before. He wanted to cower behind the other's wings the way Squid was doing. Flame let out a small snort of fire and drew himself up as tall as he could get. "It is us," he said, "from the prophecy. The Dragonets of Destiny," said one soldier in awe-struck voice. "Wow, dragons actually call us that?" Viper said. "Lame. I hereby forbid anyone to use that phrase again." "Is that a roasted seagull?" Ochre asked, shoving his way forward and pointing at a half-eaten carcass on one of the tables. "Is anyone going to finish that?" Without waiting for an answer, he snatched the bird and sank his teeth into it. Behind Starflight, Squid let out a small whimper. A few of the Skywings exchanged glances, looking a little more skeptical than they had a moment ago. Starflight could feel panic rising in his chest. He had to speak up. He had to be convincing, but his jaw felt like it was welded shut. "Why are you here?" asked one of the soldiers. "After you escaped, why come back? To here, of all places." "And what did you do to the Sea Wings?" asked another. "No attacks, no raids, no sign of them since we destroyed their summer palace. We know plenty of them must have survived, so where's the counterattack?" "Do you have Queen Scarlet?" demanded a dragon leaning on the wall by the fire. "What have you done with her?" Flame waved his front talons as if none of these questions were important. We're here to tell you you're supporting the wrong Sandwing. He tilted his head arrogantly. Bern isn't going to be queen. Like the prophecy says, she's going to die. We've chosen Blister. The uproar was immediate. Several dragons sprang to their feet, knocking over tables and scattering bones and ashes everywhere. How dare you! Somebody shouted. We're not taking orders from some puny dragonettes. We'll never let the Sea Wings win! One of the guards shoved Flame in the chest. Traitor! The red dragonette stumbled back, stepping on Starflight's claws. Blister killed my brother! Roared another soldier. She will never be queen. Her fate is to die beneath my talons. We're the dragons from the prophecy, Viper yelled over the din. You have to listen to us. No, you're not, said the same authoritative voice. Starflight had heard from outside. An orange dragon with a long, scarred neck stepped forward, peering intently at the dragonettes. Starflight had a feeling he'd seen the Skywing before, probably in the Queen's palace. The other Skywings quieted as the soldier reached around Starflight, seized Squid's ear, and dragged him into the middle of the room. Squid yapped with pain, flung his wings over his head, and sat down, gibbering. That is not the Sea Wing we captured before, said the orange dragon contemptuously. You saw the marks she left on the guard she fought with. And I do mean she. Also, she was blue. This sniveling creature is no dragonet of destiny. He looked around at the others, his eyes gleaming with suspicion. I say we kill him. Perhaps we kill them all. No, Starflight blurted. I am the Nightwing the Queen held prisoner. I swear I am. Remember, she had me fight scavengers, and then the other Nightwings came and took me? He held his breath. Please believe me. The dragon breathed a plume of smoke at him, then narrowed his eyes at Ochre, who had moved on to gnawing on a large leg bone he'd found on the floor. I suppose that could be the Mudwing, he muttered. And we never saw the Sandwing or the Skywing. He studied Flame and Viper. We assumed the Queen was the Queen was holding them elsewhere in the palace, in case they could be fixed and allowed to rejoin us. His gaze stopped on Flame, but perhaps living with the talons of peace will ruin any dragon, even from the best of tribes. He jabbed Squid sharply with his tail, and a small green dragon moaned unhappily. If you're the Nightwing from the palace, he said to Starflight, what happened to the Sea Wing who was with you before? She's... Starflight felt hopelessly stupid. Why hadn't Morosir guessed this might happen? Did he think this outpost was so remote that no one from the palace would be here? But if he really wanted to replace Tsunami with Squid, he had to know someone would notice and object sooner or later. He knew he should act like Squid was a real prophecy dragonet, especially if they all wanted to get out of this cave alive. But he couldn't bring himself to betray Tsunami, who, if you asked him, in all of Pyria was a dragon most likely to fulfill a prophecy and save the world. He braced himself and looked the orange dragon in the eye. She's gathering an army. This was true. No need to mention that it was an army of Rainwings. We're going to end this war. He turned to the other Skywings in the cave. Soon you'll be able to go home to your families. Soon you will all be safe. Soon there will be peace. He caught a look of longing on some of their faces. Even the fierce, bad-tempered Skywing tribe wanted a chance to live peacefully. He was sure of it. Was that a prophecy? One of the soldiers whispered to another. Starflight shook his head. It was a promise, he said. Viper let out a muffled, impatient snort. Starflight knew even his real friends got fed up with the way he sounded like an epic scroll sometimes, but he couldn't help it. When he thought about prophecies and acting like a hero, that's how he thought they should all sound. But what about Blister? Asked the orange dragon. Have you really chosen her? Is she the next Sandwing Queen? Several of the Skywings hissed, rattling their wings. Flame and Viper and Squid and even Ochre were watching Starflight now. He could guess that they were willing him to stay the right thing here. To convince everyone that Blister was the choice of destiny, that she was going to win and nobody could do anything about it. But he remembered Blister's menacing stillness and the glint of evil in her eyes. He remembered the way she manipulated the Sea Wing Queen, and he remembered that she'd killed Kestrel and tried to kill Webs, although there wasn't any good reason why. Oh. He glanced at the alternate dragonets. If Blister wanted to pick and choose her dragonets of destiny, she needed the original guardians dead, so they couldn't dispute her version of history. His mind was racing. She knew about Glory when we met her. She even said she had Nightwing friends. She's conspiring with them. Which meant she was almost certainly part of the plan to assassinate Glory and Tsunami too. He coiled his tail. He couldn't make her the next queen of the Sandwings. If his voice had any power, he couldn't let her use it. No, he said, wincing as his voice cracked. He sounded like a 1-year-old dragonet pretending to be a queen. We haven't chosen anyone yet. So choose, Burn, said one of the soldiers. Several others nodded. Burn is cruel, Starflight said. You know she is. She lives for war. Even if she wins, she won't stop killing and fighting. She'll probably turn on all of you and try to take your kingdom next. There was no uproar this time, only shocked silence. They may not have wanted to admit it to themselves, but what he'd said was true. Burn was not a safe ally to have, and she'd be a very dangerous queen of the Sandwings. Yeah, Flame said half-heartedly what he said. So, was that a prophecy? The same soldier whispered. Let's take them back to the palace, said the orange dragon decisively. We'll turn them over to Queen Ruby and let her decide. If they know anything about Queen Scarlet's whereabouts, she'll get it out of them. She lashed his tail. No, Starflight thought. Backing toward the door, back to the Skywing Palace. That would be even worse than staying with the Nightwings. Queen Scarlet had tried to make him fight to the death in her arena. He still had nightmares about scavengers with sharp weapons driving his neck, determined to stab out his eyes, or about a horde of Icewings descending to destroy him, even though Morosier had taken him away before that happened in reality. But this wasn't a dream. The Skywing claws reaching for him were real, and his legs really were not moving. And he couldn't remember a single training move that might help him fight back, and he was about to be captured and imprisoned once more. And then, the door burst open, and the Nightwings came blazing in. Okay, we're done with chapter 12. Okay, I guess we're going to raid someone. Let me just drink my water, okay, chat? 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We actually read 7 chapters today. That's good. That's good. Okay. Let me pull out my raid message. Okay. Let me pull out my raid message. Hold on a second, chat. Let me get it in my server. Hey, where is that thingamajig? Where is that? There you go. Okay. Oopsies. Okay. There you go. Here's the raid message. Sub raid, I mean. God. And then this is the main raid message. Raid. There you go. And then let me just paste it. Okay, there you go. Okay, so let's see. Who can we raid? Who can we raid? Let me see. I don't know who can we raid. Let me see. Okay. Oh, okay. You know what? Let's see. I think Shion is still live right now. They're just chatting. So yeah. Wait. Let me see if she's still live. Wait, I'm mute myself first. Yeah, so she's still live. We can go raid. Oh my gosh. Oh she no. Oh, the feedback, sorry. You didn't hear that. Okay. We can go raid Shion actually, so yeah. Otsukira. So we can go raid Shion. So yes. Let's just let's go to just chatting. Okay. Alright. So yes. Thank you for staying with me. I hope you like the story. Chapters 6 to 12. I was supposed to go for 6 to 10, but we made like a bonus +2. So yeah, Sakira, I will see you in the next stream, maybe. I don't know when, but I'll let you all know. Okay, so good night, good morning, good evening everyone, and I'll see you next stream. I'm super tired. Bye guys.